Hey everyone, welcome to Insert Game here. I'm Brian.
And I'm Madison.
And I'm pleasantly oblivious.
By that he means Jared.
Well, everybody, it's been a while since we've been with you. As I said in the last episode, I did have COVID and lost my voice for a while. And then I think each and every one of us, in one way or another, had life just kind of bog us down for a while.
Yeah, it's been crazy for all of us. Because I had a crazy month with projects that I had to work on for sponsorships and stuff. We've all been very busy, and one of us has not only just been busy, but also been very sick. So
yeah,
it's okay. We found him a new voice.
It's almost as good as the old one, but I'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's close.
Built it out of spare parts in the back.
Yeah,
it
might be a little dysfunctional, but it mostly works.
Just had to dig into the old boxes in the warehouse back there. Just be like, oh yeah, we could make this work.
Someday I'm seeing in my head Wally with his shelves and shelves of spare parts.
Yep.
Let's get the screwdriver. We'll make this work for him.
Well, the last episode, we took a step back to what was initially our pilot episode and shared with you our thoughts after the Game Awards 2020. Talked a little bit about the voting jury, and we had that discussion last year, and we shared that in the last episode. Nothing more needs to be said about that, but there's plenty more that needs to be said about other things. And now that we are on the other side of the Game Awards 2021, let's talk about what we just watched. And before I say what I came prepared to say, I just want to get your guys' hot take on what you thought of the Game Awards.
I mean, from my perspective, it's pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. It felt very corporate. It felt very, patting themselves on the back kind of showcase, and a lot of advertisements, and just that's what it was. It was just a very corporate award show, and that's kind of what I expected. I typically watch it every year to see if there's any cool announcements that might pique my interest. This year, there wasn't really much for me anyway. Like, I know there were some announcements in there that really got a lot of other people excited. The big thing for me, I think maybe, was just they did show off some more Elden Ring, which, I mean, I'm super excited about that game next year. But at the same time, I'm also I've already seen a lot of Elden Ring at this point. I don't need to see more of it. I just want to play it. So I appreciate seeing more footage, but I'm just kind of like, yeah, I mean, that's cool, but I just kind of want the game now. So
yeah, you're like a baby in a crib, just like, give me.
Yeah. Elden Ring is one of my biggest anticipated games of the year next year. So at this point, I'm just like, don't show me trailers. I just want the game.
Well, it did win most anticipated game of the year for the second year in a row. So that's saying something right there.
Yep. I mean, the only game that I'm probably anticipating more than that one next year is the Breath of the Wild sequel. But even then, we don't even fully know 100% if that's coming out next year.
I feel like a lot of the winners were predictable and acceptable. There was one, though, that I didn't expect actually taking a win. But overall, I mean, it was a solid, I think, award show.
What was the one that surprised you?
Game of the year.
That surprised me as well, delightfully so. I mean, I thought it would either be Deathloop or Metroid Dread. And I mean, if I was to put money on it, I would say Deathloop. Everybody has talked about Deathloop for good reason. A very unique gameplay. It is still a first-person shooter. It is still that genre of game that is everywhere these days. But I felt like they had a uniqueness to it. For It Takes Two to take Game of the Year, that impressed me. I did not see that coming.
Yeah, that was actually a really pleasant surprise.
Yeah, I was curious because out of all of the games that were nominated for Game of the Year, the only one I had played was Metroid Dread. So I was just kind of like, well, I don't really have any much. Well, actually, no, I did play Resident Evil Village. I forgot about that. But I felt like for me, it was probably going to be between Metroid Dread and maybe Ratchet and Clank because I had heard some stuff. But I hadn't heard anything about, like, I didn't know about Deathloop until the Game Awards, but I also live in a shell this time of year. I'm under a rock, so it's just my information networks are all dried out this time of year. They're frosted over, so I'm gonna have to look up Deathloop because yeah, there's actually quite a bit of hype about that game.
The award show was the first time I've ever heard of it as well. And I just, when it comes to first person shooters, I don't typically personally really pay attention to those kinds of games because they're just not really up my alley. Like I played my fair share of first person shooters back in the Xbox 360 days. So I've kind of been burnt out on them. So I don't really pay attention to them, especially since, you know, as you said, Brian, they're basically everywhere nowadays. Like whenever I see a first person shooter, I'm just like, oh, they're a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
But I mean, if this one's as interesting as people are saying, I mean, might check it out. Maybe not. I'm not sure.
Right. I think for me, the reason It Takes Two took it is because the narrative storyline that they went to, the way that gameplay was innovative enough. And it was a concept that more people can resonate with from a storytelling standpoint. And I think that's one of the reasons why it took Game of the Year, is because so many people can resonate with what's happening in that storyline. Whereas for like Metroid Dread, it's a very technical execution of a game. It feels great to play, but it's narrative light. It's more about, you know, the environment and some of the other stuff until you get to bigger moments in the game right at the end where you get all the lore bombs.
I mean, that's the kind of stuff that I care about in games. So that's why Metroid Dread is my personal game of the year. But then again, I've never played It Takes Two. So, I mean, that's why Metroid Dread was the one that I would have wanted to win, but I was not expecting it to win. I was not expecting it to win at all. And actually, I was actually very pleasantly surprised to see It Takes Two win. And I was actually very, very happy for the developers. I say good for them, because isn't It Takes Two an indie game?
I think it started as an indie game and then picked up a good publisher.
Right. So, I mean, so far, I think It Takes Two is the closest thing that the Game Awards has come to giving Game of the Year to an indie game.
No, even bigger, it's an EA game. An EA game won Game of the Year. How about that?
Really?
Yeah.
Well, it's published by EA, but it's developed by an indie studio. So
exactly.
It's not it's kind of an EA game, but also kind of not. So it's a in between.
It's an EA game in like title only.
Well, it's like Jared said, that's the publisher. I'm looking for the developer right now. Hazelight Studios developed it, and Electronic Arts published it.
Because didn't they also make the what was the game that Jared, that you and our friend played on
A Way
Bros
Out
and Roleplayers a long time ago? A Way Out. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, because they did that split screen concept there, so they're kind of pioneering that.
Right. Yeah, because I know that much about It Takes Two. It was made by the same people.
And that game was also published by Electronic Arts. So,
yeah.
But it is good to see a smaller studio take Game of the Year. That was really cool.
Oh, yeah. No, that was really, really cool. I'm super happy for them.
One thing that interested me was, and of course, as a composer, I'm going to point this out, the best score in music category, Nier Replicant won. This is the second year in a row that a remake won best score. And what's interesting about that is, while, yes, there were new arrangements, the original music was written years and years ago.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if that just means that we have a proclivity towards certain things, or the fact that we were able to take the originals and maybe improve upon them gives it a bit of an edge.
Yeah. And I was telling Brian this earlier, and I'll say it here on podcast. The awards that I was personally the happiest about were the awards for Best Customer Support and Best Ongoing Game, both of which went to Final Fantasy XIV, which I was very happy about because I really wanted that game to win. That game has been amazing lately.
Thank you, Final Fantasy, for beating Fortnite. That's all I'm going to say.
I mean, like, I was telling Baku that I would have actually been upset if it didn't at least get best customer support.
I just love the irony of best customer support. Our game is so popular we can't accept new players.
Yep. It's so true. They had to stop selling the game because it's so successful and popular.
Yeah. But to me, what really, to turn around what you said, what sells me on the best customer support isn't the fact that they had to stop selling the game. It's the attitude in which they stopped selling the game, because they have come straight out. They've been transparent and they've been like, we're sorry. We're working as hard as we can. We don't want to do this, but we have to do this to stabilize our servers. Be patient with us. Here, we're going to give you some free play time. We're sorry. I mean, that right there is customer support. Transparency, showing that they care. So big.
Yeah. I have always said that Final Fantasy XIV has one of the best development teams in the industry. Like, their customer support has been it has been unmatched. Like, they are outstanding when it comes to like communicating with their player base and getting to understand exactly what it is that they want to make the game better. I mean, the director of the game, he not only develops the game, he plays it. He plays it all the time. And there were changes that were incorporated into the latest expansion, Endwalker, that no one was asking for, but they are changes that are extremely welcome, because people are like, oh, wow, we didn't even think about something like this. And the director, Yoshi P, was just like, yeah, I've been playing the game and I just thought that this was a good idea from my own experience. Like, not only is he getting feedback from his own player base, he plays the game himself to get a good feel of, I think this could be better.
And I can greatly appreciate that design philosophy of I'm a content creator and I want to make something that I myself would enjoy.
Yep, exactly. And I hugely respect that. And to me, like, I think that is a huge part of why this game's customer support is as good as it is. They want to create something, not just something that the players love, but they want it to be something that they like to play, as you yourself said.
There's a quote from Romeo and Juliet that's always stuck with me. And it said, never trust a chef that won't lick his own thumb.
Yep.
Yeah.
The best developers are going to be the ones developing games that they themselves will enjoy.
Yeah. And like I said, I'm super happy that game won the award. And I've been playing Endwalker in my own time, and I've been really loving it. It definitely deserves the praise that it's been getting, in my opinion.
So let's take a moment and step back from the results. I think we can all agree that the results this year were satisfactory, much more so than last year. Let's take a step back and talk about the show itself. Because I think, and we touched upon this in our discussion last year, I want to broaden that a little bit. I think this show is miscategorized. This is not an award show, or at least the awards are not the focus of this show. I've taken some time to do some number crunching. And I want to share a few numbers with you as it pertains to this last Game Awards. So it was a 3 hour and 40-minute show. Yes, the actual show was 3 hours, but there was a half-hour pre-show, and it started a little bit earlier. The live stream itself was 3:40, and there were awards given at that pre-show, so I'm lumping the pre-show in with everything else. The number of full awards given, and when I say full awards, I'm talking about, this was an award where a presenter got up, introduced the category, talked a little bit about what this category means, and then there was a full recap of every single nominee, complete with music and a little clip of each game. And then after that, and the Game Award goes to, there's a dramatic opening of the envelope. The winner is announced, full fanfare music playing. The winner comes up to the stage, physically accepts the award, and gives a quick 30-second speech. That is what I'm considering a full award. There were 10 of those given out in that 3 hour and 40-minute live stream. 10 full awards. There was another kind of award called what I'm calling a quick award. This was done in about 5 seconds, and it was, and the next category is this. These are the nominees, and the nominees were quickly listed on the screen, and the award goes to announce the winner and moving on. Honestly, that a huge insult, in my opinion. There were 12 of those quick awards.
Okay.
And there were 8 awards in the pre-show. These awards were so kicked to the curb, they didn't even deserve to be in the full show. They were in the pre-show. There were 8 of those, all quick award style, which means there were 10 full awards and 20 quick awards. 2/3 of the awards given out were not even given full appreciation. And can I say really quickly, 2 of those were the only audio-focused awards in the show. Yes, I know. I'm a composer. I am going
I totally get where you're coming from because I do sound design in my field, and the Oscars, there's definitely been some stuff people have been talking about in the sound design field of they aren't getting a lot of recognition or respect
Audio.
in the sound design field and audio for feature films and like compositions and Foley and ADR and all that kind of stuff. So no, it's very common in the both industries for just entertainment in general that if it's not something that can be seen, it gets pushed to the wayside.
It really
It's
does.
it's really amazing just how little people care about audio when there is just as much work that goes into just audio and sound design as there is the visuals.
Well, I view there are 3 pillars of game design. These are 3 things that everything else sits on. If one of these 3 pillars is weak, the entire game comes crashing down. And those 3 pillars are art, gameplay, and sound.
Yeah.
Yes, story is important, but not as important as those 3. You can have a lesser story. And so long as you have excellent gameplay, excellent art, and excellent sound, that will support the game.
That dates all the way back to even like Pac-Man.
Yeah, I
mean-
completely agree with those 3 pillars.
Yeah.
The earliest narrative was get a high score.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, the 2 awards for sound were both quick awards. The award for actual sound design was pushed to the pre-show. It's so insignificant it goes to the pre-show. But I can't blame the Game Awards for that. As you said, that is industry standard, unfortunately. But there were a lot of awards that should have been more important that were those little quick awards. As I said, 2/3 of the awards were done in quick award style. So that brings our total amount of awards to 30. 30 awards were awarded at the Game Awards. There were 51 gameplay trailers.
And that's why I think a lot of people just consider the Game Awards to be the end of the year miniature E3 more than an actual award show.
It is an E3. It's disguised as an award show. It's not
is.
even as good as E3 because at least at E3 you can decide which game trailers you want to watch from which company or which genre instead of sitting there and watching 3 hours of first-person shooters. I looked up 2 different compilations from the Game Awards, one of them being a compilation of all the awards given. The other one was a compilation of all of the game trailers. The awards took 16 minutes to present all of the awards. There was 1 hour and 10 minutes of gameplay trailer. So
That sounds about right.
these numbers speak for themselves, and this is my biggest issue with the Game Awards. It is not celebrating and congratulating the people who have worked on games this last year. It is more building anticipation for the games that are coming.
Yeah, or like capitalizing on like hype and trends because like some of the awards I'm seeing on their website is like content creator of the year, best esports athletes. These like I can appreciate the achievements that these people have accomplished, but this is the game awards, which I feel should be focused on people who developed and create games.
Having an award for best content creator of the year at the Game Awards is kind of an equivalent of if the Academy Awards had an award for best movie critic of the year.
Well, there's already an award show for that, the Streamies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like that does not belong here. And same with the best esports coach, best esports event. Why does an event get an award?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. It doesn't because we're supposed to be celebrating games and the achievements of the developers who created those games.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we giving out awards for esports events?
It's because, unfortunately, the title of the show is the Game Awards, and that's vague enough that they can loop this in.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, but it's the truth.
Well, and the unfortunate truth is all these things, all these decisions, especially having 51 game trailers, it all comes down to money and marketing.
Yep, that's exactly what the show is.
That show was massive. Did you see how much money went into that show?
Oh, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I have no idea how much it is, but I can only imagine that it's a huge number.
I mean, honestly, the reason why they have 20 Quick Awards is because there's no time for them. There's no time to give them the time they deserve, because a majority of that time is slated for advertising new games. They really need to cut their budget, free up some of that time. Don't completely get rid of the game trailers and the world premieres. Those are exciting, and we should have that. But bring the focus back to the people making the games and actually recognize properly everybody that made a difference.
It's like, I almost feel like it's running into the same thing like what happened with like the Super Bowl, because a lot of people watched the Super Bowls for the commercials.
I mean, I've been guilty of that in the past.
That is true, but the Super Bowl isn't 70% commercial.
Right.
The focus is still on the football. The focus is still on where it needs to be. And the Game Awards has lost their focus.
Well, honestly, I don't think the Game Awards ever had that kind of focus to begin with. I think the focus has always been about disguising a show that's all about marketing and building up hype for new games as an award show. And that's how it always has been. It goes back to its days as the Spike TV Video Game Awards.
Yeah,
and
it's a cultural event.
Yeah, it's always been that way. It's always been that way. And it's a shame too, because video games, it is a medium that deserves to have a legitimate award show, to have developers recognized and celebrated for the things that they create for the players to enjoy.
We should just make our own game award show and just call it the Devies.
Well, and here's the thing. These awards do exist, because I know the IDGA, which is the Independent Game Developer Association, they have awards. The GDC, which is Game Developer Conference, they also have awards, but they're not widely publicized.
Yeah, they're not celebrated like this kind of event.
And that is where a lot of the focus goes, is when you have something that's widely celebrated. And unfortunately, what brings the crowds in and the viewers in to watch those really is those world premieres.
And that's what I'm saying. Like, you can still have the world premieres, but the fact that it took up that much of a percentage of the show, at that point, it's overkill.
Agreed.
I honestly feel like the video game industry is still going through growing pains, because you have to think video games only really took off and entered like extreme mainstream like media like in the 90s, in my opinion.
Yeah, it is still a relatively
it existed,
new medium.
but it was still kind of growing. But the 90s, with like home console systems becoming a lot more popular, especially with things like the NES and Super Nintendo, it really started to balloon. And then with the internet and computer gaming and stuff like that, it's now to where video games is the biggest in terms of capital industry for entertainment. And I feel like they're still trying to figure out just what to do with that.
Yeah, because it's so huge and so profitable, but it's also so new that there's a lot of problems that need to be resolved. And I mean, all the time you hear stories of like big hyped up games that they come out and they're released completely broken and unplayable. And I think a lot of that can also be attributed to the fact that, the industry is doing this because it's able to get away with it. And, I think that also roots back to just the industry is so huge that it's still trying to figure out solutions to these problems. It's like they're still trying to figure out how to properly release a game even today. It's attributed to the Game Awards, but it's attributed, I think, just to all parts of the gaming industry. Because as you said, it's still a new industry.
And not only is it a new industry, it's a constantly shifting industry because the internet changed everything. Way back before the 90s, when the video game crash started, one of the biggest scapegoats of that crash is E.T. for the Atari, which was a very busted game that was rushed out.
In only 6 weeks.
We have games that are stupidly rushed out these days, but the difference is we can patch them.
I'm looking at you, mobile games.
But anyway, it is going to be interesting to see in the future how the video game industry evolves and how the Game Awards evolve with it, because this show has evolved and it has every year it grows more and more trailer infested, we'll say. and it'll be interesting to see if it just ends up evolving into more of an E3 or if it actually starts to crash because of that. I don't know, but we'll see. We will see what happens, and it'll be interesting to watch in the coming years. There's been a lot of criticism over this very thing. I have seen multiple YouTube videos criticizing it over the very thing that we are. And I want to see if they address that next year and actually do something about it.
I just figured out the best way to determine who wins if we do our own game show.
And how's that?
You know how they have like the bouquet at a wedding? We just have all the game devs get into a giant mass, and we're going to throw the trophy blind into the horde, and whoever emerges with the trophy wins.
I want it.
I'm not going to lie, people would watch that.
Oh, they absolutely would.
Well, let's move on to something a little bit more optimistic.
Okay.
Because last week we got to see Nintendo's Indie World Showcase, the last direct of the year. And a lot of people are calling it a flop. A lot of people are saying it was underwhelming. I am of the opinion that the only reason anybody's saying this is underwhelming is because
it didn't have Silk Song.
Surprise, surprise, it didn't have Silk Song. I just want everybody, everybody, Silk Song's not going to be in an indie world, okay? It's bigger than that, so just accept it. But I thought this was actually a fairly decent direct.
Yeah, no, it was a great indie world, and I went into it fully expecting that there was not going to be any Silk Song. Okay,
yeah,
and
I just the collective internet experience whenever that wasn't announced was just that Hercules meme of disappointed.
Well, like I was watching it live, and I was looking at the stream chat just flying by, and half this chat was just, "It's not Silk Song, I don't care."
That's why I turned the chat off.
Yeah. Well, like I keep the chat on because it's funny. But
okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
But, and like, don't get me wrong. I'm excited to see more Silk Song in the future. As much as I did have a hard time playing the original Hollow Knight, I still like it. I still think it's a great game, and I'm excited to see what the sequel's going to do. I'm as excited for Silk Song as everyone else is, but I think people are blowing out of proportion, like, if the indie world was as bad as it really was. It wasn't a bad showing at all. It was a great showing, despite, not having Silk Song. Silk Song, as you said, is too big for indie world. It's going to be in a direct.
Yeah, if not its own thing. This is not a Nintendo product.
Yeah.
Right.
If you're going into an indie world expecting Silk Song, you're going to be disappointed. Sorry.
They may use a direct to announce the next trailer of Silk Song. I don't know. They may, or they may not. But if
because-
they do,
because
it
here's
will
the-
probably be a full direct, not an indie world.
Because here's
Yeah,
the thing. Well, I wanted to say real quick, because the whole point of an indie world is to show off new indie games from small development studios that you haven't heard of. It's to spread awareness for the smaller projects that are out there. It's not meant for the really big blockbuster indie developer studio things. Like they do that once in a while. Like when they announced Ori and the Blind Forest was coming to the Switch, they put that at the end of an indie world. But at the end of the day, the indie worlds are all dedicated to, hey, have you heard of these? If not, you should check them out. They look really cool.
And to be fair, Team Cherry is an indie studio. They do
And
still
they-
fit in that title, but
Yeah.
Hollow
They're
Knight is
still-
arguably one of the most successful indie games to ever come out of the indie community.
Right. So
It is
like,
a little bit bigger.
yeah, Hollow Knight is one of those games that like, yeah, it's an indie studio, but it's not as craving for attention as some of these other smaller projects might be. I guess is a way to put it.
Yeah, I think for me, because that mentality I think derives from people by nature are just risk averse, and they're looking for something they know they will enjoy and get their money out of. So something like Silksong definitely scratches that itch of just like, I want this and more of it. And you even see that in like films with like remakes and other things like that, or all the updated versions of games getting released where they're, updating the graphics and stuff. Is like people want a reliable, good experience. And sometimes whenever they see something new, it's still an uncertainty, especially because the video game franchise is a terrible, terrible trait of advertising a game without actual in-engine gameplay footage. So what you see on screen might not always be what the end product is like.
It's true. It's so true. And this just goes back to human nature at this point. Like humans want what they're familiar with. And that's just the end of it. They want something new, but they want it to also be familiar.
Well, let's talk
And-
about some of these new but not necessarily familiar games. And,
Yes.
and there's one in particular which actually does feel familiar and I think was the star of the whole show, and it's what started the whole show, Sea of Stars. I am excited
yeah.
about this game.
That looked delightful.
Yeah. And one of the most delightful things is they have a guest composer they've brought in who's doing some of the tracks, Yasunori Matsuda, who is famous for composing for Chrono Trigger, Chrono Cross, and the Xeno series.
I didn't
Yeah.
know he composed for the Xeno series.
Yes. And
Oh,
he is coming into this game, which if you look at this game and look really closely, they're taking massive, massive inspiration from Chrono Trigger. One of my all-time
Yeah.
favorite games. I want this now.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger, also the I think it was it the Mana series? There's a lot of JRPGs that this definitely feels like it's pulled inspiration from.
I have never played the Mana games or Chrono Trigger, and I know I have to. But this looks like it will be a lot of fun, and I'm interested. Sea of
Yeah.
Stars.
Like honestly, this is like how good the visuals of the game are. I love everything about Sea of Stars except for one thing from that trailer that I saw.
And what's that?
The like where the health bars and like the mana are. That is so hard to read, especially if like you were playing this on like a Switch or something small. That's going to be really difficult to read.
I mean, it's just in the bottom left-hand corner, isn't it? I'm looking at a screenshot
I
right
know,
now. It
but
doesn't
for
look too
some
bad.
reason it just feels so like plain compared to everything else that has so much like character and color and visual style. It just, I don't know. It looks like they took the Game Boy Pokemon like style graphics and then just slapped a coat of paint on it.
I don't know. I think it works.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
it's-
it's not terrible. I'm
It's not
okay with
bad,
it.
but I just feel like it could be better.
You want it to be a little bit more stylized.
Yeah, I guess so. To match everything else.
I disagree with you. I think that having it a little bit toned down keeps it out of the way from everything else so it doesn't stick out. Having the dark background helps the information on top of it actually stand
it
out a
gives
little
it the
bit.
contrast. Yeah,
It gives it the contrast it needs. And I actually really like the stylized corners they have on the box around it. I like it.
yeah. If they tie in that style with other things in the game, I think I would like it more. But just from isolated in the trailers, because I'm just thinking of it from like a mechanic standpoint of if it is turn based, that would give you the time to look at it because it is turn based, not real time, right?
I don't know that they ever said.
I don't know. I don't think
Okay.
they. I don't think they said. I would assume it's probably turn based, but I could be
Because
wrong.
if it's real time, looking back and forth between those two, I could see being a little bit difficult.
Yeah, Chrono Trigger was turn based, so I would imagine this will probably follow suit.
Okay.
Yeah, especially if it's taking inspiration from Chrono Trigger, I would imagine that it has to be.
Yeah. What were some of the other games that stood out to you guys?
So one that stood out to me was one that I saw that I was like, I want to play this, but I also don't want to play this at the same time.
I know which one
And
this is.
it is Endling Extinction is Forever. I think the game looks really interesting, and the art style is really, really nice looking. The art style is definitely up my alley. The thing that makes me go, I don't know if I want to play this game, is the emotional trip that it would put me on. Because the whole basis of the game is you're playing the last mother fox in the world, and you have to move your fox kits to a place where they won't be harmed. So basically, you're the last foxes around before the whole species goes extinct, and you have to protect. You have to protect them along the way. So that means your little child foxes can die along the journey. And as a person who gets emotional over animal deaths in movies and games, I saw that and I was just like, I don't know if I want to play this, but I also think it's really interesting.
Yeah, I shouldn't be allowed to play that game because there's a reason I don't have kids.
Yeah, you're kind of the polar opposite of me in that department.
Yeah, I'd be the cynical one of like, all right, kid, figure it out.
I am excited for Endling. I've actually been following the developer Hero Beat Studios on Twitter for a while. So I've been watching as this game has developed. And I know it actually released for Steam not too long ago.
It has a demo. The full version's not out yet.
Okay, so it was a demo. I knew there was some kind of release. But yeah, I'm excited for this game, and I've got high hopes for it. This is the kind of game coming out of the indie world that really injects life into gaming as a whole. You're not trying to kill anything. You're not trying to shoot anything. The gameplay is unique, and I applaud any game who has any kind of unique gameplay feature like this.
But you want to know a game that does have a lot of killing?
What's that?
I'm going to use that as a very terrible transition
Go for it.
River City Girls. 'Cause I love me a good beat 'em up. I can't help it.
Oh, yeah, River City Girls. It's not quite my genre, but I have to say, I'm curious.
It looks clean. Like it looks so fluid from the sprite animation to the mechanics and everything like that. Like the first one has been on my radar to go and play whenever I get a chance to over the holiday break, but I'm just it goes back to those old school arcade games that I grew up with because like there were some things, you know, like Streets of Rage and River City Ransom and what are some other ones? I mean, even there was like the X-Men arcade game that had those side-scrolling beat 'em ups, and it's just kind of I've always had a passion for those kinds of games, and I'm really curious to see what the indie sphere is doing because you don't really see a lot of AAA developers making games like that nowadays. I think the last big one that I remember was they did like a modernization of I think it was Battletoads at one point.
Because I know there was a new Battletoads game that came out somewhat recently. Wasn't
Yeah.
there? Yeah. But I remember a lot of people were complaining about the art style.
Yeah, because it went with that like sleeker vector style art style, which just everybody was used to the pixel style from, the other games.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they were trying to go for something new this time around, and people just weren't really keen to it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I don't really, as you said, I don't see a lot of big beat 'em up games that come out of anyone, like even indie studios. Like indie studios make a lot of Metroidvanias, but I don't really see them make a lot of beat 'em ups.
And as you said, it looks very clean, and that doesn't surprise me because this is coming out of the studio Way Forward, which is the same studio that did Shantae, and that was a very clean game.
Oh, that explains a lot.
Yeah,
yeah, because I recognize the art style immediately. It looked like a Shantae game just from the art style alone.
yeah.
We also learned that a big favorite of yours, Brian, Don't Starve Together, is now coming to the Switch.
Yes, I saw that. Like I'm part excited and part I've already got it on Steam and all my friends are on Steam. It's just unless it's a Nintendo title, it's hard for me to get excited about a multiplayer game on Switch.
That's fair.
If it's on Steam, unless it has
Yeah.
crossplay. Now, if this has crossplay, I might go ahead and pick it up because I do enjoy being able to kick back on the couch and play in handheld mode. And that would be fun to play with with Don't Starve. Having said that, though, this is a perfect game for the Switch. I think this will work on the Switch very well. I've played Don't Starve on mobile before, and it plays well even on mobile.
Yeah.
It's a perfect game for Switch.
Yeah, and I know that there were some people out there saying they were surprised by that announcement. Like, oh, didn't the Switch already have that? It had no, it had the original Don't Starve, not Don't Starve Together. But yeah,
And Don't Starve Together is completely different. Like Don't Starve was the original, and then they kind of did Don't Starve Together as a. It's kind of like what happened with Fortnite. Don't Starve Together was an afterthought of, well, let's do multiplayer. And then it just took off so well that development on the original Don't Starve ceased, and Don't Starve Together is the game with all the updates now.
Yeah.
Yep, that's the one that gets all of the new development.
And it is the perfect game to play with people. Addison, we've drug you into a few games of Don't Starve. It's a lot of fun.
I love being the weregoose. Because I play as the what was his name?
Woody.
I forgot. Woody. Yeah, Woody. Because he can turn into a weregoose, a werebeaver, and there was a third one. I
can't
forgot.
remember.
I don't remember off the top of my head.
But I remember reading about that mechanic. I'm just like, oh, that sounds amazing, and I want to be a part of it. And also he gets a free axe.
He
So
does.
I was just like, I immediately was like, I mean, with all the wood you have to collect in the game, that's actually quite the benefit
It
to
is.
start off with.
I like to play as Weber.
Isn't he the regular character?
No, he's the spider.
Oh, he's a spider. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know a lot of our friends we play with, they love playing as one of the ghost girls, like the ones who have. Like,
I can't remember her
ghost,
name.
Abigail?
Yes, Abigail.
Yeah, because they have like the ghosts that fight off animals and monsters for you.
So that's why I like Weber, except Weber doesn't get a ghost. Weber gets to build a spider army. And I like my spider army.
Yeah, if I remember anything from Hollow Knight, you love your spider army.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't make that connection, but yeah, I do like my little Weaverlings in Hollow Knight.
Oh no, we found a theme.
Oh no.
Yep, we found it. He likes to make an army of spiders.
I know what you're getting for Christmas.
Oh no. Charlie will kill you.
You just open the box and it just pours out of the box. Just
So another game that caught my eye was Alicia.
Oblivion of the Twin Goddesses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, because there was another game that it was a puzzle centered kind of game like Alicia is, and it was like you and someone else had to work together to solve puzzles.
Oh, wait. Which one was that?
It was like all frosted and frozen, kind of like, I can't remember what that game was now. But like whenever I got that idea is like, because this one is you're swapping between the two characters and they can each do things like
Right.
differently. Oh, that's going to drive me nuts. I can't think of the name of that game.
Well, while you're trying to think of that, there is another game that I know caught your attention, and it definitely caught mine. And that one is Locomotion. Or no, Locomotive. It was Locomotive.
Yeah.
Everybody do locomotion.
Yeah, I like the play on words there with locomotive. But a good old-fashioned murder mystery. It just looks good.
Is that what that is? It's a murder mystery game?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think what it is there's 3 suspects, and I don't know if you swap between the 3 or you pick one of them and you have to prove your innocence.
That's right. I remember seeing this game. That was the one with the murder mystery. Like
I really like that twist that the quote unquote detectives are the suspects as well.
That is an interesting twist. I like that. Because it kind of makes things really tense when it comes to trying to solve the mystery. Because like, how are we going to trust these detectives when they might have been the ones who did it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, are they just trying to cover their own tracks? Because it's a train. Ah.
Okay.
You know, a game like this is going to be just littered with puns.
Oh, and I'm going to love every minute of it.
But yeah, the game looks awesome. I'm definitely willing to check that one out.
So we'll end it off here with the game that Nintendo ended it off with, Amori.
This is one that I've never heard of before, but apparently it is a big deal.
I'm kind of, I don't know. I don't know where I sit with this game.
I'm on the fence, honestly, because like the visual style of it reminds me of like, I don't know. It's like the combat gives me Earthbound vibes.
Earthbound was where I was thinking as well.
But then like the illustration style feels like kids manga, I guess.
I guess you can say that's what the point is.
Yeah.
So because I remember when they ended it off with that, the chat was going nuts. Like it was a really, really big deal.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I've never even heard of this. But I mean, the combat looks cool. I'll give it that. The combat looks certainly interesting.
So I'm going to refer back to something I said earlier, but in a different way, because we talked about how story is important in a game, but not quite as important as those other 3 pillars. But for a game like Amori, I kind of think like the story is going to be the key to this game. It looks just so quirky. I think that what's going to either cause it to win or lose is going to be the story.
Oh, yeah. It's going to be the linchpin of a game like this.
Agreed.
Yeah, especially, as you said, with an art style like that. Because the art style is interesting to a degree, but it's also kind of like, you know, it's like kids doodling. Like there needs to be a point to an art style like this.
Well, it's a love it or hate it art style. Really.
Yeah.
Right.
That's kind of how I feel too. It's a love it or hate it situation.
They're definitely like setting up for some stuff though, because like whenever you go to like the overworld segments, the sprites, everything blends together except for your character. And now I'm just like, oh no, they're already setting it up with the terrible or weird stuff is going to happen in this game. And you can just tell from the way that they're illustrating things.
Yeah, because your character is always in black and white.
Yeah, and everything else is this like really soft pastel saturated world.
Oh, I want to know more. I really want to know more.
I feel like whenever you have an RPG, we need to add a 4th pillar, which would be story.
Story, yeah, RPG is definitely, yeah, you have to have a good story in an RPG.
I mean, I would argue that to a degree, because there are plenty of RPGs out there that are awesome RPGs, but they don't really have much of a story going for them.
I go back to Final Fantasy 15 that honestly I felt had great music. The art was fine. The gameplay was great, but the story kind of left you wanting. And
what do you got against hanging out with your bros?
I mean, I like camping, but but yeah, the trailer for Omori did what it was supposed to do. It left me wanting more, and I want to know more.
And
So I'm
like I said,
curious.
like in terms of like the story pillar thing with an RPG, I mean, as an example of like RPGs that you don't play for the story, I mean, you don't play Pokemon for the story, and that's basically an RPG.
Says you.
Yeah, I'm
is-
really invested in this story of becoming the Pokemon champion again.
I am deeply invested in the deep lore of why every single 10-year-old main character only has a mom.
So that is a fair point, and the RPG, the genre of RPG, has become a very broad genre. Narrow it down to a JRPG, and story becomes infinitely more important.
I could name some JRPGs that are really good that don't have much of a story for them.
You're just gonna be my devil's advocate today, aren't you?
I mean, I'm just saying, I get what you're saying. I'm not saying that you're wrong. Like, story is an important thing when it comes to a good RPG, but I still wouldn't categorize it as a pillar.
I can agree with that. It is important, but it still sits under those main three pillars.
Right.
I know. I'm curious what game you would use as reference, just out of curiosity.
Like some of the earlier Final Fantasy games, they didn't have much of a story going for them.
What are you talking about? They had crystals galore.
Final Fantasy 3 story is very, very simplistic compared to what the more modern games have, man.
See, which one was 3?
It was the third one.
Oh, that helps.
No, like I've played Final Fantasy 3, and the main story of Final Fantasy 3 is it's 4 kids who are out to save the world from a baddie. That's the story.
Right.
That's the
'cause
plot.
That was the one where the job system kind of took the forefront.
Right. Like that is a Final Fantasy game that you don't play for the story. You play it because the freaking combat system and job system is awesome. And the overworld is fun to explore.
Yeah, and magic crystals lead to orphans saving the world.
Yeah, I mean, like in terms of story, there's not much going on. It's just 4 kids out to beat a bad guy. That's all that story is. I mean, obviously you could make an argument that it goes deeper than that, but I mean, at the end of the day, the story on its surface is fairly simple.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying, like, I still agree that story is a very important thing when it comes to a JRPG, but I still wouldn't categorize it as a pillar. But that's my opinion. That's just me venting an opinion at the end of a podcast.
Well, that's okay. Because all opinions matter here, I think. Maybe. I don't know anymore.
I will. Opinions are like the stock market. It fluctuates in value.
Well, thank you guys for joining us today. You can find us on Twitter at Insert Gamecast, and we're also on YouTube. And it's just great to be back with you guys. That was a long little hiatus, but I'm glad to be back.
It's good to be
Me
back.
too.
It's good to be back and make stupid jokes at the beginning and end of a podcast.
You guys have a great Christmas, have a happy New Year, and yeah, we'll be back with who knows what.
Drink lots of eggnog.
Eggnog.
Baby Storm, Game of the Year 2022. I'm calling it.
Babies.